October! The witching month is here. That means it's time to talk about a spooky game you can play for free this Halloween season.
Daddy's flown across the ocean, leaving just a memory. A snapshot in the family album. Daddy, what else did you leave for me? Daddy, what'd you leave behind for me? On and on it was, just a brick in the wall.
Mad Father isn't exactly the most hidden gem. PewDiePie did a Let's Play of it, which is bound to get a game some attention. But whether you've heard of it or not, I wanted to talk about it. Because Mad Father is a game that's worth talking about, although it might not look particularly special at a glance. Mad Father is an RPG Maker horror game, so it's probably not surprising that the graphics and gameplay are fairly simple. The environments and enemies don't really stand out in the genre either. There's a spooky castle crawling with zombies and ghosts in various stages of mutilation, as well as killer dolls and the occasional Lovecraftian fleshy abomination. What makes Mad Father special are its story and themes. See, Mad Father is all about family.
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
The game's protagonist is Aya Drevis, possible reference, a young girl who lives in her family's secluded mansion in the woods with her father and their female servant after her mother has passed away. But all is not normal in the Drevis household. While Aya's father works as a doctor during the day, at night he does other work down in the basement. Aya has been told never to go down to the basement, but frequently she'll hear the sound of people screaming. Yes, Aya's father is a serial killer, and the whole family is keeping it a secret. One night, Aya awakens to her father's screams echoing through the house. Since he's the one who's supposed to be making other people scream, Aya knows that something is wrong. She leaves her room to investigate and finds the mansion crawling with what seem to be the vengeful spirits and reanimated corpses of her father's victims. And that's the game. Exploring the now infested mansion while trying to stay alive and find Aya's father, while getting a more and more detailed view of just what a twisted monster the man really is. It's a brilliant premise for a horror story in any medium. So simple, but so fascinating and disturbing. This is very much the type of horror game where the story is the most important part. And the heart of the game's story is this warped family, which in many ways resembles a traditional loving family unit, but in other ways is the furthest thing from it. For example, at one point Aya takes inspiration from one of the beloved fairy tales she heard growing up, which had the moral, burn anything that gets in your way. The game also has this interesting divide between the player and the protagonist. Alfred Drevis, the titular Mad Father, really is the villain here, but instead of the game's goal being to stop him, we're put in the shoes of someone who desperately wants to save him. The game does an excellent job of helping explain why Aya wants to rescue her father. We see that when he's not abducting and torturing people, he actually does a lot of decent father things. But most players are probably still going to want to see him 6 feet underground, especially after getting to talk with some of his victims and seeing what he did to them. Even if you don't hate him, you want him to be stopped. Aya, however, is a child, and she sees things less logically. The player will probably sympathize with Aya as a character throughout the game, but most players probably won't sympathize with her goal. You know that one way or another, this will not end happily. It creates a very interesting pathos that's present throughout the entire game. The story doesn't just focus on Aya's relationship with Dr. Death Daddy Drevis either, although that's obviously a big part of it. There's also Mommy Drevis, who fell in love with a serial killer and became his enabler before dying of an illness, and Maria, the devoted assistant whom Daddy Drevis has been having an affair with. The relationships of all of these characters with each other, as well as the relationships of the Mad Father's victims with all of them, form the heart of the story, and they're rarely as simple as you might expect. Of course, even though the storyline is the game's main draw, the gameplay is still an important part of the experience. Mad Father is one of those RPG Maker horror games that has no combat. Yes, those fan art pictures of Aya holding a giant chainsaw covered in blood are a little misleading. You do get a chainsaw during the game, a mini chainsaw of the kind used for trimming hedges, but it's only used for stuff like busting up crates. Since there's no combat, the bulk of gameplay consists of exploration and puzzle solving, finding items to open up new areas while avoiding enemies or fleeing from them in chase sequences. More often than not, getting caught by an enemy causes instant death, but there are exceptions. Kind of an odd one out is a couple of crawling zombies in the main hall. In this one room, Aya gets a life bar, which the zombies damage with their attacks. The crawling zombies are quite fast and will drain your health pretty quickly if they catch you, so you gotta make your exit from the room quickly, and going to a different screen makes the life bar disappear, and it'll be full again if you go back into the room. This is the only section of the game that works like this. It's not really bad by itself, but because it's the only time, it feels kind of out of place. The sudden gameplay shift takes me out of things a little. The game also has quick time events, which some of you might have guessed from some of the other videos on this channel I'm not a huge fan of. They do serve a purpose. It makes it so that some of the jump scares in the game have actual in-game consequences, and you have to be on your guard for them. Mindless button mashing still doesn't make for compelling or enjoyable gameplay, but it's used sparingly enough that I'm able to tolerate it. Overall, I would rate the gameplay perfectly adequate. There are some really cool puzzles, particularly near the end where the puzzles take a more disturbing turn, but the oddly eclectic way a bunch of gameplay elements are introduced without really being fully utilized makes it feel a little rough around the edges. Also, the chase sequences where you have to escape from an insta-kill enemy are extremely precise. The enemies are always faster than you. You can't really run or perform any moves in this game, so to make these sections challenging, the game maker forces you to follow the exact shortest path to your destination, or whatever's chasing you will catch and kill you. If you're just one square off and have to correct, you'll get caught and die. This can make beating these sequences feel like a matter of trial and error more than skill, particularly the first time you run through them, where oftentimes you can't see your destination from the starting screen, and don't really have time to adjust for unexpected obstacles along the way. Fortunately, these chase sequences are used sparingly enough to keep them from getting too frustrating. For me personally, while playing the game wasn't a bad experience, it was definitely the story and scares more than the gameplay challenges that kept me going until I actually beat it. I would not recommend Mad Father on the strength of the gameplay alone. The graphical presentation is very competent for what it is, a basic top-down RPG Maker game in a style very similar to an SNES Final Fantasy game. The main color of the game's palette is dark blue, with dark red, light flesh tone, and white as the main contrasting colors. It's a nice atmospheric color palette that's pleasant to look at and not too busy, and developer Sen certainly seems to have a better grasp of color theory and visual design than a lot of creators of RPG Maker games. The character portraits are done in a manga or anime style, and their designs use a similar color scheme to the rest of the game. Simple, but memorable. In the original version of the game, some of the portraits could look a little googly-eyed, Aya's mother being a notorious example, but in the updated version, they've gotten new portraits that have fixed this. Like the gameplay, I wouldn't recommend Mad Father on the graphics alone, but the visual style is solid, if fairly straightforward, which certainly helps. The music and sound effects. great. Exactly what the game needed, in my opinion. Music leans heavily towards classical and baroque, but there's some industrial and other influences too. It's a simple but memorable and effective soundtrack that doesn't overwhelm the game. And the voice acting, well, there's not much of it. Will get your attention when it happens. That's all I have to say about it for now. I'm going to go into plot twists and spoilers now, but before I do, let me give my final verdict on the game, so those of you who want to play it can hear that without hearing spoilers and can then stop the video. If the premise sounds remotely interesting to you, I would recommend Mad Father. It's more straightforward and less artsy and abstract than games like Yuma Nikki and Ebe, but still a great example of how to do effective horror with limited visuals. In this case, delving into more concrete psychological themes rather than something more abstract. It only takes a few hours to complete, maybe double that if you really struggle with these kinds of games. There's a couple of tricky parts, but mostly it's not that hard. You can download it for free from the link in the description, or if you want to reward the developer for his work, you can buy it on Steam for $5. You can also get a bundle with one of the developer's other games, Misao, for about $9. I haven't played Misao, so I can't really weigh in on that one. Alright, plot twists. If you don't want anything spoiled, stop the video now. Near the end of the game, you get to choose whether you want to save Daddy Drevis or not. The first time I played the game, I chose to let him burn. After everything I'd seen in the game, I just felt that was the socially responsible thing to do. Unfortunately, that leads to a premature bad ending that skips part of the game, including all the big plot twists, and causes you to miss out on a lot of the story. It's not a very satisfying ending. Fortunately, the developer made sure to put in plenty of save points right before you have to make this choice, so if you don't take the hint and save your game, you have no one to blame but yourself. I was able to immediately pick up right where I left off and get the true ending. Once you choose to save Daddy Drevis, the correct choice, you get a couple of big plot revelations in rapid succession. Turns out that Alfred has been planning to taxidermy Aya and turn her into one of his creepy human dolls so she can be perfect forever. Okay, not exactly the most shocking turn of events, given the direction the game has been going. And accompanying this is the reveal that his wife didn't die from illness. He killed her when she found out about his plan to cut open their daughter and turn her into furniture, and she refused to go along with it. This leads into an extended chase sequence where you have to escape from Daddy that's basically the final boss battle of the game. This feels like the most natural and inevitable conclusion to the game's plot. Then, if you do manage to successfully escape and get the true ending, comes the next big twist. Unbeknownst to the player, Aya has slowly been succumbing to the same madness that turned her father into the psychopath we see in the game. Prior to the game, she's been torturing and killing animals, which her father had discovered. And his plot to kill her, to keep her pure, was because he wanted to stop her from turning into a murderer like him. By the end of the game, it strongly hinted that she survived, only to pick up where dear old Dad left off. This is the biggest curve that the game throws, and the really nice thing is that it is foreshadowed strongly, but in a subtle enough way to hide it from players. There are various things Aya says throughout the game that are a bit off, but it's easy to assume this is because of her strange upbringing and messed up parents. Then there's the dead cat, which you can easily find at the very beginning of the game if you look in Aya's dresser. When you first find it, you'll probably assume that it's there because of Aya's father, or is another part of the creepy manifestations happening in the house. The game even plays a scare chord when you find it. Except Aya doesn't show her normal frightened sprite when you find the cat. Of course, that's because she isn't scared or upset about finding that dead cat in her dresser. She killed it. This makes both characters much more tragic. Daddy Drevis didn't exactly come across as the most sympathetic character for most of the game. In fact, it was pretty easy to dismiss most of the moments of apparent kindness from him as the actions of a manipulative psychopath. But unlike him, we've gotten to know Aya in this game, and we know she's not an evil person, despite this revelation. Finding out they have the same mental problem makes it a lot easier to see Alfred not as an evil monster, but as a deeply sick man, all but consumed by his overpowering mental illness. In fact, by the end of the game, it seems to invite questions about the very nature of evil. How much of Alfred's evil is excusable because of his mental illness? What about Aya's? Is Aya's mother more responsible because she enabled Alfred and is more sane than him? What about Alfred's assistant Maria? While she doesn't seem to be mentally ill, her loyalty to and obsession with the doctor comes from him saving her when she was homeless and starving to death. Are her actions understandable given what her life has been like? By the way, I think it's pretty neat how learning Maria's backstory that makes her sympathetic is an entirely optional part of the game, but later in the game you have to choose between saving and letting her die, and you have to save her to get the good ending, which you're more likely to do if you learned her sympathetic backstory. It's a nice subtle way to reward players who do extra exploring. Some people have complained that learning the truth about Aya ruins the game for them because all the characters are just awful. I disagree. Mad Father's characters are a fascinating examination of characters who do incredibly awful things, but still retain enough sympathetic traits to sympathize and even empathize with them. And like I said, it invites questions about the very nature of evil itself. That's why, while it's not a perfect game, at the end of the day, I think it's a dang fine one. You can get a little bonus ending in the game related to the mysterious character of Ogre who appears in some of Sen's other games, but it's pretty unnecessary. It doesn't really make the story feel any more complete. As far as the other games Sen has made, I have played some of The Witch's House, and while it's decent, I didn't find it as engaging as Mad Father. Also, there's a lot more cheap deaths, but that one and Misao are still out there if you're craving more after this game. If you liked the video, be sure to give a like, subscribe, and ring the bell to see more. That concludes the main portion of the video. Wow, so my Silent Hill video from last year seems to have gone semi-viral. It would be nothing for larger channels, but for a channel like this one, it's kind of a big deal. It's the largest single subscriber boost this channel has had so far. Obviously, that's exciting. Anyway, I'm really glad for the new people that are here and all the people that enjoyed the Silent Hill video. Overall, the reception has been very positive. Some people were a bit critical in the comments, rather passionate. The Silent Hill fandom has a lot of passionate people. We had some debate, but really nothing too heated. It was pretty tame for the internet, so I'm glad for that as well. Welcome to the new people watching. I know this video is more of a basic review rather than some kind of deeper artistic commentary like that one was. I actually started this video before that one started blowing up. I hope you still liked it. Halloween is a tough time because there's just so much thematic content I want to make for the channel around this time of year, but my already busy life also tends to get busier. It's just such a struggle to find the time. I'm going to try to make at least one more Halloween video of some sort. Maybe I'll be going into November with the horror content. The struggle is real. Anyway, welcome one and all. Stay safe out there, don't go home with any strange men in shiny glasses, and have a happy Halloween.
Holding on he was just a break in the wall. Holding on he was, oh, just breaks in the wall.